So we just ran into some crazy new official artwork. This is all super niche behind the scenes, as this is actually a studio that Blizzard had hired to develop the concepts of the War Within all the way back during Shadowlands. Some images are shocking. We can see a giant old god-like Kraken figure that we've never seen before. We can see a giant old god type fish inside of some prison in some room. Remember that old god fish hint we got a few months back in the War Within? What is even more crazy, we see a gigantic hand of what appears to be Azeroth or some other absolutely massive entity coming out of the water. And remember, we have a void sea in the zone, as they said, a sea under the sea. So let's take a look at some of the most interesting images from this official concept art that is connected to what we currently know about the expansion. So I've been running a raid channel for a few months now, and I would really appreciate it if you guys could check it out. And there is no better time to start raid than now, as they're giving everyone a completely free legendary champion. All you gotta do is log in after you download the game with my link in the description or the QR code that you can see on the screen. So until the 5th of May, everyone is going to get Ludex Arthur. All you gotta do is log in every single day. But better yet, there will also be a final reward, a legendary relic where the community will actually vote on what it will be. Now, if you guys are looking to join in, I'm currently running a pretty successful clan. We got a few more spots left, and I've also got dozens of videos on how to start. However, better yet, they're going absolutely crazy with the codes, and keep in mind, you can only pick one. So you got Supreme 6 for Supreme Gallic, you got Monkey King for Son of Wukong, get Alice for Alice, get Loki for Loki, plus Game Leap for additional stuff, all on top of my code that you can use. So click my link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen and you will get Sergala as soon as you complete the tutorial. Ugo at level 15 plus a package worth $60. Then you can use one of the codes I just mentioned. Then another one on top of that called Game Leap. All you gotta do is, after that, log in for 25 days, so you will get yet another legendary. Literally never been a better start. So check out my link in the description, QR code on the screen, and also check out my second channel. So legit, we have some crazy new information that kinda dropped in the background, as this is just a portfolio of a studio that apparently Blizzard had hired all the way back in like 2021, so actually still during Shadowlands, as this is when they actually began to work on the War Within. This studio called West Studio is a concept artist team that worked to flesh out the ideas that Blizzard originally gave them for this expansion. While this is of course super early work and there are like 100 images that mainly work to set the tone for the actual Blizzard art team, there are a few images that we can kind of cherry pick from this to really analyze because they're super interesting. Well, these are definitely not final concepts. Someone at Blizzard obviously told them to draw these, and I think some may be predictors for what is going to happen in this expansion. Now, the studio itself says on the website that they had the pleasure of providing a blue sky environment exploration for the War Within, though much of the work wasn't directly used in game. These early concepts served as a useful pre-production inspiration that influenced the vision of several key locations that are in the final release. As I had previously stated, this really was fleshing out ideas, but why would these guys draw a massive old god that looks exactly same as that mural that we have with the Nerubians? And also, why would they draw this fish being inside of a chamber, which, by the way, do you remember the void fish hint? Also, why would they come up with this giant hand that looks like a female hand almost resembling Azeroth, like coming out of the sea, which, by the way, you may remember there is going to be a sea under the sea and all these hints. While we could of course discuss some of these images for an hour, let's just focus on the most interesting old god figures. So all of you that have been following my channel or just lore for a while now, you might remember that Blizzard literally added a 5th old god in the lore. Original classic lore, so 20 years ago, there were 5 old gods, but then the Chronicles some 10 years later retconned that to 4 old gods, so N'Zoth, Khatun, Yogg-Saron, and Y'Shaarj. Then in Dragonflight, they added 2 documents, one stating that 5 old gods exists, and people were talking that it's just Blizzard making a mistake, not being consistent, not fact-checking their own lore, but then that has been in the game for years now, and it was never changed, which means it was definitely intentional. Then we come across one more document, which is really a discussion in itself, but long story short, they told us that the Titans are kinda BSing us when they told us that they had imprisoned the old gods and ordered Azeroth, as in that is not the whole story. And what about what they hid beyond the waves? Well, check this out. Now we are beyond the waves. We have discovered this brand new Titan expedition that we never heard about on khaz'algar. However, realistically, could this at the same time refer to Evaloran and the other side of Azeroth? out. I digress. Obviously, these two bits of lore weren't just a coincidence. In fact, in the War Within, all the way back in the beta of the game, we had discovered this oddly suspicious old god mural of an old god that looks kinda similar to Azeroth, but really unlike any being we had previously seen in the past. It had crazy symbolism of what appears to be Nerubians entering its mouth and faceless ones everywhere. It also showed us a giant crystal on the right, emitting a light around it, which I'm like 99% certain it is Beledar, because Beledar is referred to as the sun of this underground zone. Not only is the name Belore literal sun in the Elven language and the Arathi are half elves, but Blizzard has been going on and on about how they came up with an underground zone that has a sun of its own. So you all know this, we can see this, but now that we run into this third-party artwork from this concept art studio, everything kinda unravels. It isn't random and looks like the fifth old god is actually realistic. So let's look at 11.1.5, which is coming out in a bit more than a week. We've learned from the official Blizzard website that we are getting the return of N'Zoth's horrific visions from BFA. The in-game justification for that is that we are traveling in time because soon something similar is going to happen and we need to figure out what we did and to learn as much as possible from previous events for this new upcoming event. Now, remember, that mural was literally never explained. The mural has a crystal, and with Nightfall, it seems like we're getting the final battle for Beledar and the final push of the Nerubians, which means this will happen soon. Now, let's take a look at the artwork. So, there is one really interesting image of what appears to be a Kraken-like old god, and why I wouldn't say it is just a Kraken is because the fifth old god in the mural looks very close to this concept. A lot of tentacles, he seems like an underwater being. Big important point to figure out here is that we are actually under the sea here. I mean, under the island within this rift known as khaz'algar, and also we had gotten multiple void hints of a sea under the sea, a void sea where no light shines. You might remember that quest where we got that fish, which, by the way, is usually the disguise of old gods, in particular N'Zoth, that told us that what I just mentioned. Now, the other artwork shows what appears to be a fish-like old god being inside of a giant crystal in this very strange room that appears like an altar. There is also another similar room in the concept art that is sort of underwater that shows what appears to be a portal and has a tentacle coming through it. Now, I am aware this is all so vague. Of course it is, because it is 2021, earliest possible concept art, but I think they already knew what was going to happen back then. If you may have noticed, there is a strong underwater theme with the War Within. The lore that we know is that apparently in order to cleanse Azeroth, the Titan Eonar together with Elune planted a World Tree Eluna here, but Amantul ripped it out and created this rift. We also learned that the bottom of khaz'algar is the actual World Soul Chamber, a Titan prison the Titans had created over Azeroth, known as the World Core. This is where we can actually access the World Soul. So check this out. If this is where the World Soul is, where the Titans put the chamber, where the life forces Elune planted a World Tree, wouldn't by the same logic old gods also want to implant themselves in this exact spot? Almost certainly one of the old gods dug himself here very deep, and before any of the other things happened, they first had to deal with him. One of the theories is that this old god is imprisoned inside Beledar itself, which is why the crystal is so gigantic. The explanation from Aliria's book, 1000 Years of War, mentioned another planet and how the light had actually imprisoned beings in crystals the size of mountains, and these beings were unable to die. I know there is so much to unpack here, but something is definitely going on. It's possible that the fifth old god was underwater, which explains the Kraken appearance and all the other fish-like features. Furthermore, we seem to be finding laboratories containing old god parts, and in the opening cinematic, Nerubians were harvesting old god blood from some tentacles whose origin we've never learned about. Just to shed a little bit of light over this, I want to mention the Arathi prophecy that actually foreshadowed all of this happening, everything that happened and everything that is going to happen now. So it told us of their expedition arrival and everything that happened, but then it said, the remains of gods scattered across the battlefield, pulsed with an unseen light. Their echoes, a clarion called stirred the Arathi, compelling them to fight, to kill for the world's dawn. Amidst the chaos, the Forgotten One cried, when the last star fades, the Emperor's crown will weigh heavy with the sins of 1,000 years. The stalwart soldiers threw down their spears and wept tears of blood and burning anger. Keep in mind the fact that they mentioned the remains of gods, which we are running into all over the place, even in this outbreak you can just see. Furthermore, the Forgotten One seems to curse the soldiers, saying that when the last star fades, the Emperor's crown will weigh heavy with the sins of 1,000 years. First of all, Forgotten One really sounds a lot like the original interpretation of the old gods back from Warcraft 3, and also, the last star fading sounds quite a lot like the mural in the Nerubian Zone in Belladar. The last star fading, aka Belladar, it's still hard to speculate now what will happen because we still have that Rootland Zone that we're yet to see with the Haranir and also the entire Void Sea or Sea Under the Sea, yet we had just gotten hints that the Ethereals took the Darkheart, very likely to Karesh. It's uncertain whether 11.2 is going to be Karesh or if that is just foreshadowing for Midnight, but there is still a lot to unpack in khaz'algar. When you think about it, nothing actually happened in the story yet, despite the fact that 11.1.5 is coming out in a bit more than a week. We still don't know what Belladar is, we still haven't discovered that hidden zone, we haven't gotten to the roots of the World 3, Old God Blood hasn't been explained, that mural was never explained either. I really feel like that Old God is going to be relevant, and that might even be the final boss of the expansion. There was previously a hint that Belladar could be a prison, and we have discovered that artwork that shows stairs from the Arathi church leading inside Belladar. If the last star really fades and it permanently converts into the void, then yeah, we will have to go inside the crystal itself and deal with whatever is there. However, all the hints so far do point out that the fifth old god does actually exist, or he might have existed in some ancient part of Azeroth's history with his Kraken-like appearance very similar to N'Zoth. Thank you for watching. Check out what is going on with Sargeras by clicking on the screen and subscribe to my raid channel by clicking on the screen as well. See you next time.